For those of you joining us from the west coast of the U.S., good morning. Everyone else, good afternoon or good evening. We are ready to get started on our week 4 Bluebeam webinar in our 5-week series. And today will be all about cloud technologies, in particular Bluebeam Studios and Bluebeam Drawings, which I don't think enough people know about, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to include it today. Couple of housekeeping reminders. Everyone will be muted during the presentation. There is a Q&A feature. If you have a question, feel free to put it in there. Probably will not respond to it live, but I'll try to have some time at the end of the webinar to respond to questions. And if I don't get to your question, when the recording is edited over the next few days, I'll add a section at the end like I've done with all of the others. The first 3 webinars were recorded. They are available on our YouTube channel. When you leave this webinar today, there'll be a survey. We do ask you to fill that out. It is anonymous. We would like your input, but there'll be a link in there to our YouTube channel. And if you go to the chat feature of the interface, there's already a link in there as well if you've never been to our YouTube channel. That's the YouTube channel there. Once you're there, you can subscribe to it, and then you'll get notified as I post new Bluebeam related content up there. If you'd like to contact me after today's webinar, feel free to do so. That's my phone number, email address, and the website for all of our Bluebeam training materials. I am not a Bluebeam employee. Infotech is not a Bluebeam reseller, but we provide Bluebeam training and consulting services. For anyone who hasn't attended the previous webinars, I am using Review 20. It's been out now about a month. It is extremely similar to 2019 and Review 2018. Anyone using 2017 or older is going to have a very different interface than what I'm showing here. Okay, so cloud services. You may or may not be aware that over the years, Bluebeam has actually provided up to six different cloud technologies, 5 of which are still available and active today. 2 of those are at the top of this list, and I can't show those to you because those are in beta. And when you participate in a beta program, you're prohibited from showing unreleased products. But there's actually 2 betas actively going on right now for Bluebeam Atlas and something called Bluebeam Project Rover, which I get the impression they've renamed that to simply Bluebeam Rover. And that is a construction management component with change orders and RFIs and that sort of thing. So if you haven't heard about that, keep an eye on it on the Bluebeam website. I'm sure you'll be hearing more and more about that in the coming months. That leaves us with 4 more, Drawings, Studio, Studio Enterprise, and Studio Prime. Studio Enterprise has been discontinued, and what it was is you could purchase for roughly, it was somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000, I think. You could purchase the studio technology and install it on a secured server behind your firewall and have a private, in essence, cloud instead of using the free Amazon Web technology that's available for the standard Studio and Studio Prime and Drawings. They're no longer selling that, even though I'm sure they're still supporting it for those firms that invested in it. So that leaves us with 3 that we're going to talk about today: Bluebeam Drawings and Bluebeam Studio and Studio Prime. Talk about Drawings first. Bluebeam Drawings was released just over a year ago. It's cloud-based, it's browser-based, and it has mobile apps on both iOS for both iPad and iPhone, which Review and Studio have never had any support of the iPhone, nor have they had any support of any of the Android devices. Bluebeam Drawings has an app for the Android device as well, or you can just use your browser. It's cloud-based, it's free, and it allows people to take documents, upload them to a server, where they're converted from PDF file format into a super high resolution image format, and that makes them extremely user-friendly, fast, very high detail, high resolution, and it's a neat system. I'll be showing you that here in just a few minutes. Bluebeam Drawings can interface with Bluebeam Studio and technically Bluebeam, not just Studio projects, but Bluebeam Studio sessions as well, and I'll show you an example of that today. Anybody who has a BB ID, a Bluebeam ID, can be granted view-only access to the documents that you publish into a Bluebeam drawings project. They don't need review. They don't need even a trial license of review. They can just go to drawings.bluebeam.com and create a BBID, and they can start accessing the documents that you make available to them. Now that's for someone who needs to view the content that you're providing. If you want to be a content provider, you do need a license of Bluebeam Review, and your license manager needs to identify you and authorize you as a Bluebeam Drawings, what they call an uploader. And that has to be done before you can start pushing and publishing documents up there. So that leaves us with Bluebeam Studio. Bluebeam Studio is also free. The difference between it and drawings is that drawings lets you look at stuff. Bluebeam lets you do things to stuff. It lets you upload PDF files to a studio session, and up to 500 people can simultaneously be marking up a single PDF file if that's what you want to do, but you're actually doing things to a file. Studio Projects allows you to upload any file of any kind and then identify project participants through the cloud that you would like to allow them to grab maybe a Revit model, check it out, modify it, check it back in, and have it maintain a revision history of the file manipulation activities that have gone on through a studio project. So it's a really capable system that does all sorts of things, but it's got its limitations. The only way to get to it is through a licensed or unlicensed copy of Bluebeam for the Windows PC, or through the Apple iOS iPad applications that are available. That's it. There's no other way to get in there. A studio session has rules. It's limited to PDF files only. It can allow up to 500 people per session at one time. It can allow you to upload a total of 5,000 PDF files, and each of those can be up to 1 gigabyte in size. And it allows you to do collaborative markups on 2D or 3D PDFs. The only catch to that is that if someone is participating in your session using the iPad app, it doesn't support 3D. So keep that in mind if you're going to be pushing documents up there and you want everybody to be able to participate. You have to have a licensed copy of Review to host a studio session, but you don't have to have a licensed copy of it in order to participate. So you can have a trial version that timed out weeks ago that has automatically switched over into that view-only mode. But when you use that to join a session, while you're connected to that session, you inherit markup capabilities for free. And then there's Studio Projects. Studio Projects is not about markups. It's about file storage in the cloud for free. It's like Dropbox on steroids. There's no limit to file type. There's no limit to file size. There's no limit to file quantities. You upload an entire folder of documents if you'd like. There's a single button to do that. There's a tremendous amount of, in the settings capability, a tremendous series of tools to help you control who can get to what and what they can and cannot do once they're there. So it's a terrific free document management system in the cloud. And then there's Studio Prime. Studio Prime is not free. Studio Prime is an enhancement to the free Studio server. It's a subscription model. You have to pay an annual fee to be able to utilize the enhanced tools that are part of Studio Prime. Some of those enhanced features are user management, folder automations, which is you create a folder, a watched folder, and you specify the behaviors and rules that say, okay, anticipate me uploading an Excel spreadsheet. And when you see it appear in that folder, do these things to it and run it through this workflow process. It grants you access to the application programming interface so that you can write custom programs that take Bluebeam to a whole new level. And it's got some very nice reporting tools in there as well. But again, it's not free. It's something you have to pay to participate in. So all of these things I've talked about all start with a BBID. Now, most of you who've been using Review for a while are familiar with Studio, or you've at least seen the icon on your screen. Ironically, to me, it looks like an Adobe HUD, but when you go to that, you have to sign in with a Bluebeam identification and password combination. And if you don't have one, then you have to go to where it says create account, and you have to create an account. Well, If you just want to use drawings, you don't even have Bluebeam installed, you can still create a BBID by just going to that web page. Just go to drawings.bluebeam.com. You'll see the exact same interface to either sign in or create an account. And either way you do it, you're putting everything into the same database. So if you've already been using Studio for quite a while, you can immediately go to drawings.bluebeam.com, sign in as yourself, and you'll be able to see your own account, your own Studio projects that are accessible for you to do something with. So that's where I'm going to stop for now, and I'm going to go to a browser. Okay, I've got a saved URL, but this is it, drawings.bluebeam.com. I'm going to sign in. This is my standard BBID that I use for everything else, and I'm going to log in. And it already knows a couple of things. It knows my ID, it knows my Studio account. If I didn't have an actual Studio account, this would just be blank. And the only thing available to me would be, let's create and start a Bluebeam Drawings project. So you don't need review to use drawings, but if you have it, then they handshake and talk to each other. The other thing that is known as my license manager has gone into the cloud-based administration program that Bluebeam has called the Gateway, and they've identified me as someone with a licensed copy of Bluebeam who is able to upload. They've tagged me as an uploader. If that wasn't done, I'd be able to join projects, but I wouldn't be able to create or upload documents. So those things are what are enabling me to do specific things. So I'm going to say create a project, and I'm just going to give it a name. This is week 4, so I'm going to say week 4, and the files I'm using are of an architectural standard. So I'll say AIA, and I'll hit create. Now it created a brand new project here called week 4 AIA. I'm going to upload some files to that, and while they're processing, I'm going to go look at a different one. It'll take them about 40 seconds or so to do what they need to do. So here's what I would do if I had no involvement of working with Studio. I just wanted to work with drawings. I would go to that project. I would say I want to add drawings. I would ignore this that says, do you want to go get them from a Studio project? And I would say, yeah, let's upload some stuff from my local drive or from a shared network drive or Dropbox or someplace like that, anywhere that I can access files. I've got a file here that is a small 3-page, multi-page PDF. It's got an architectural, an electrical, and a mechanical drawing inside of it. I'm just going to choose it and hit OK. It can now see my drawing on my local machine, and I'm going to tell it to upload it to the cloud. It says your drawings are being processed. Now what that means is it's taking a single 3-page PDF and it's generating in the cloud 3 separate super high resolution image files for the 3 pages that are inside of there, and I'll wind up with 3 sheets in my project. Now here's an example of where I've done that before. Here's 2 things I wanted to show you on this example here. I've got one called roadway plans because I tend to, in these webinars, tend to stick with the architectural stuff, and there's a lot of DOT and infrastructure people out there. So I'm going to open up this project that I've got in drawings called roadway plans. This was a combination of two different uploads that I did. I did one upload that was a single PDF that had about 6 sheets in it, and I wound up with 6 pages, and I wound up with 6 sheets here. And then I took another 5 or 6 individual single-page PDFs, and I uploaded those, and they all got converted into this high-resolution situation. Now, if I go to my iPad or even my Samsung phone, if I do that, I can just go to a browser, or I can hit this Drawings app. Now this is on my iPad, but again, it works exactly the same on an Android device. Now I can go down and click on that same project, and it'll show me those same files just as quickly. And if I choose one of them and I zoom in on my iPad, you can see how fast and how clear and just how productive that is. And it's working with these high resolution images. Once you've got and I'm going to go take a peek and see if the processing of those files I uploaded is done. In the background, it's sending me emails when it's ready. So I'm going to go look at week 4, and it tells me that the documents that I uploaded have been, quote, processed. All right, well, what does that mean? What that means is that under my project settings, it looked at disciplines, and it went into the disciplines and it says, okay, for file naming characteristics, I'm looking for the designator and the numbers and see what standards I can identify in order to pre-name and preload these files through this review process. So it's already got all that set up. So I'll just say, yeah, okay, let's see what you found. And when I click on it, because my settings are set to the AIA standard, and for that roadway project, I just changed my settings to work with a different standard, and it got the same type of experience. It already found the drawing number. It already found the drawing title. It already found the discipline because of the settings matching what it anticipated receiving. So I don't have to do any work here other than I need to simply identify the issue date for these. I'll say that this was a few weeks ago, September the 4th. And each of these is going to be Rev 1, Rev 1, Rev 1. I'll grab them all. And this part here is fast. You say, publish it. Now they are on the cloud and they are available for anybody that I have granted access into this particular project. Now, all they can do is come in and look at them. They can't modify them, but they can come in on their phone anywhere and very rapidly be able to see the details of these sheets. One other advantage of Bluebeam drawings that you do not get with Bluebeam Review Studio sessions or projects is it's got a capability that's similar to batch slip sheeting in the Extreme edition of Bluebeam. I'm going to go process that, and then I'll show you an example of another one as well. So if I go back into here and I'm looking at that project and I see those 3 sheets and I know that there's been a modification to 2 of those sheets, I'll come in here and say I want to upload from my computer a revised edition. This is Rev 2 of that same drawing. And it's got 3 sheets inside of it, and I'll come in here and hit OK. Yep, let's upload it. And it says, okay, you have to upload it for me to convert it to these high resolution images, and that's what it's doing. It's processing them again. It's also, once I get ready to publish it, it's going to identify if those drawings already exist and then stack them on top of each other and show the latest revision. So if I go back to here and I go back to that roadway plans, I did that with one of the roadway plans a while back. This one in particular, it's called SBA two-way. If you look at all of my plans, the only one that have this little watch face or clock face indicator on it is just that one document, and that's an indicator that there are multiple versions of this particular file. So if I go and click on it and tell it I want to see it, it is showing me the most up-to-date version. But I can see here that there are 3 versions. And if I go down to the bottom, there's revision history, and I'll be able to just walk back in time. This is what it was originally posted like, but it tells me it's not current. This is how it was modified about 4 days later. And then about 5 days later, it was modified yet again, and it hasn't been modified since. So that's the current version is version 3 with the history of what was there. And again, I can do all of that on my Samsung phone. It looks just as clear, just as fast, and it's 100% free except for the person who's pushing up the content. So if I go back to here and I look and see if my second revision is done, it's processed it and it's ready for me to review it. So I go to review it. I say, yeah, I want to take a look at what you did here. And I can tell here that this document has changed, and I can tell here that this document has changed, but this one hasn't, and I know that because I did the changes. If I simply go in here and say that, okay, that's correct, that's right, everything's right, these have a different revision date. Let's say this was maybe the 18th, and this was the 18th, and this was the 18th, and I say that this is Rev 2 and Rev 2, and this one I leave alone. If I come and hit publish and I leave this middle document in here, it will create a revision number 2, but it's inaccurate because it's creating a revision of the same sheet. If I go and look and I see, Rev 1, Rev 2, they're going to look identical because I didn't change a single thing. So you do have the option, if you know that that's the situation, of simply getting rid of one of the sheets before you publish it out. It already knows that it needs to stack these things based on the found drawing number, drawing title, and discipline and all of that. So I'm just going to grab the 2 that need that information and hit publish. And now you'll see here that this one has no clock face on it, whereas the other two do. And if I go get my iPad again and slide it over, and I go back, and I go and I look at all of the available projects that are there, one of the projects right here is Week 4 AIA, which I have access to, but it's never been downloaded to my iPad. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that little blue download button and say, yeah, give me not just the latest, give me all versions of the files and download that project. It happens really quickly. It's already done. Now I can hit Week 4 AIA, again, just tapping with my finger on the iPad. And if I go and tap the first architectural drawing or the mechanical drawing, either one, I can see the most up to date, but I can also go up here and I can see the history just like on the Windows edition. And I can say, well, let me see the first version, which again is flagged for me as not current. And then I can go back and I can say, yeah, let me see the most current version and then go back to the project as a whole. Everything I did involved Bluebeam drawings in the cloud with my local drive. It did not involve Studio in any way, kind of, that you can tell, all right, because it really did. So let me show you what is happening in the background when you're using drawings and how drawings and Studio projects can work together, and then we'll talk about sessions. Let me hop over here and keep an eye on my time. So now if I minimize all of this, remember this is a project called Week 4 AIA. It didn't exist, I don't know, 10 minutes ago. So now if I go run Bluebeam and I go to Studio, it's going to automatically log me in because I've just got my account set to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh this. And if you're using 2019, you're seeing some stuff here that doesn't exist previously before Rev 20. Now, when you go into Studio projects or Studio sessions, you'll get a list of all the projects that you've joined or sessions, but you'll also get a list of the ones that you've been invited to that you haven't yet joined. And if you host one of these things, you'll be able to then see the people that you've invited, whether or not they've joined your session or your project or not, and you'll be able to click on there and say, send them a reminder. You know, if you invited somebody and it's been a couple of days and they just haven't joined, you can just, with a click of a button, send them a reminder. So there's some new enhancements in 20 that are really nice for Studio. But you'll see that the project I created using Bluebeam drawings shows up in my list of Studio projects, and it's assigned the exact same 9-digit number. So it really is a Studio project, even though you're creating it through Bluebeam drawings. But that's where the relationship ends. Remember, what we did over there in that browser is we uploaded PDF files that were converted to high-resolution image files, and then all of that was published over in the cloud. So it only used Studio to create the project storage location just so that it had a place for you to access it. And if you go click and look at it, there's nothing there. None of the PDF files I uploaded are there. None of the high-resolution image files are there. The only relationship here between a Bluebeam drawings created project and Studio project is the fact that you can see them in your list of available projects. You really can't get to any documents that are out there. So just keep that in mind. But you could do it the other way around. All right, here's a project called various file formats. I could go inside of this, which has never been in any way associated with Bluebeam drawings. And I could take these PDF files that are up in the cloud and I could push them to Bluebeam drawings where they would get converted and made accessible in a view-only way. So you can go both ways with it. Right? In fact, you can even go a little bit further than that. There's a project here called AIA that has a series of folders. Right? And in one of these folders is a subfolder called Schedules. And inside of that are 2 PDF files. Now this is a Studio project that in the past I have accessed with Bluebeam drawings, which is still running right here. And when I went into Bluebeam drawings, I clicked on it It's called AIA Project right here. And when I clicked on it and I said upload files, instead of going from my computer, I said, let's go to the studio server and let's publish files from the studio server. And then I went in there and I grabbed the various files that I wanted and I uploaded them. It converted them, put them in as high resolution images, and it published them for people to access and view. It is not a continuous automatically updated link to the PDF file that's in Studio Projects. It's a pull from it that gets converted. So if it changes, then you'd have to do it again. But you can take all three of these components, and I'm going to come back and go into greater detail on sessions and projects. I just wanted to show you how you could use the three technologies together. One of the really nice features of a studio project in the cloud under Bluebeam Studio is you can take a managed PDF file like this thing here. If I wanted to work on it on my local desktop, I would just right click on it and say open it. It would make a copy of it in essence, bring it to my local machine, let me do whatever I wanted to with it. Let's say I come in here and I add, this big red line down the side there. And I click out of here and I say save it and I kill it. Well, it knows it's checked out from an original up on the cloud, and it says, well, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to check it back in and tell us what you did, or do you just want to undo everything you did? Do you want to update the server but keep working on it because you know you're going to do more to it and you're just doing like a temporary save? So you've got all those options available. I'm going to say undo checkout like it never happened. Here's the other thing I could have done instead of just opening it. I could have right-clicked on it and said add to a new session. See, projects can create studio sessions from cloud-based managed documents, PDF files. This is extremely similar. To any of you working with SharePoint or ProjectWise, you can go into that technology when it's integrated with Bluebeam. You can pick on a PDF file, you can right-click, and in ProjectWise, there's a button right there that says start or launch a studio session. And when you do, ask you to answer the questions that it needs in order to do its job, and then it does it. Well, this is doing the exact same thing. But instead of it being, behind the firewall, over here, hidden away, locked away, being managed by SharePoint or ProjectWise, it's out in the cloud and it's being managed by Studio Projects. So I'm going to say, yeah, let's start a new collaborative session. And when I do that, well, the first question you'd ask anybody is, what's the name of it? I'm going to call it Week 4 Session Live, right? And I'll hit OK. It's going to the same server, but it's using the other half of the coin. It's now going to, instead of worrying about document management, it's worried about team collaboration on a single document. So it's here, and it's got a new icon on it for anybody using Studio Projects. And if they just hover their mouse over that icon, it'll tell them, hey, that thing's in a session. It's actively in a session. And if you right-click on it, so for someone who isn't me, who's a project participant, who's working in the same project, they would see a link to, oh, you want to join that session. And then if they are authorized to or not, it would notify me and I could allow them in. There's a whole bunch of handshaking that happens over there. But here's what happened is it took a copy of this file, put it on in essence, into a session so that a whole bunch of people can mark it up. Now, for those of you new to sessions, it always seems to surprise people when they first go into it that about a third of their menu options are all grayed out. That's one of the rules of Studio Sessions. You cannot edit content. If I had that file on my local machine, I'd be able to open it up. I'd be able to go in there and say, yeah, let's erase some stuff and draw a big box around this area and just wipe all that out. It's just one of the cool features of Bluebeam. You cannot edit content when you're in a Studio Sessions. It's against the rule. The other thing you can't do is you cannot digitally sign a document while it's in a Studio Session. You can electronically sign it by pasting in an image of your signature, or, there's 100 different ways of doing electronic signatures, but you cannot access and use digital signatures while you're in a session as well. But what you can do is you can mark stuff up. All right, so if I come in here now and I tell it, yeah, I want to draw a big cloud around this area here because I've got a problem with some of those things. And let's say I change the fill to blue, and yeah, that's cool. All right. And somebody else came in there and somebody else did the same type of thing. They put a big highlighter over here and they drew a big highlight around this area and said, you know, that's a problem. So they're marking this thing up. Remember, this file is technically in 3 different locations simultaneously. It's out in the cloud under Bluebeam drawings as we speak. When I go into Bluebeam drawings and I go into that project and I go in and look at that schedule, which is sitting right here, this is what was published several weeks ago. All right, but it's also up here in a studio project here where certain people can, in a coordinated way, check it out, change it, put it back, you know, not collaboratively together up 500 people at a time, because that's not what projects is all about. It's about controlled document management with revision history. But it's also in a third location. It's up in a session where hundreds and hundreds of people could be marking it up and adding all of their comments and things. But here's the deal, is that when you're in a studio session like this and you're marking stuff up, you also have the option of choosing that document, right-clicking on it, and doing that update the server copy, update the project copy. Remember, this came from a studio project originally. So I'm going to say, yeah, you know what, it's got 2 markups on it. I'm going to actually put a third in here. I'm going to do a, let's do a line, let's make it red, and let's say, oh yeah, all this is wrong. That's all got to be changed. And in fact, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to change the width to make it a lot thicker. That'll work. I can see it a lot better now. So now I'm going to click on this and I'm going to say, update the project copy. And it said, well, what did you do? All right, why are you doing this? I'm going to say, added blue cloud, highlight, and red X, saving our progress, something along those lines, and I'm going to check it in. Right? It says, we've received your request to leave this file in a session, but to update the copy that's in the studio project. And it even tells me down here that in the audit trail that's going on in a studio session, that we have updated your project copy. So now I still have 3 copies of this file, 2 of which match. The one in the session looks like this. The one in the studio project, even though the preview thumbnail doesn't show it, it has actually been updated. If I click on it and say, show me the revision history, I can see here that it changed just seconds ago. And if I slide it over, I can even see the comments that were made as to why a new revision of this was made available. But I can also go back to the cloud where I've got that 3rd copy that is now out of date, and I could go and update it. I could just go into here and say I want to upload a file from a project where schedules, this file right here, give me an updated copy of that, go. Now it's telling me we have to process that. In essence, it has to convert it from a PDF file to a super high resolution image. And once it's done, it'll send me an email. I'll be able to select it and do that batch slip sheeting thing where this particular file here will have one of those hourglass or watch face symbols on it. And you can see here it's already finished. So I'm going to say, yeah, let's go take a look at it. We'll take a look at it here. It sees the file itself. We can already see the 3 markups that were in it. It's already got the right drawing number, the right title, the right discipline. We just simply choose today's date, tell it that this is revision number 2. We can even put in there from a session. Right? You can put in the session ID number, whatever you want to put in there, and hit publish. And now, even on my iPad, all right, if I come back and grab my iPad over here, and I toggle apps to get over to drawings, and I go back and I go click on that project. It even tells me before I click on it, it's a little hard to see here, but it says 1 update available. It was updated less than 1 minute ago. So it's telling me that one of these documents has been updated. I'm going to click, yep, download it. It's already processed it, And now it's showing me in the interface, even on my iPad, the fact that, hey, this document has been updated. That's why it's got that little icon right there. And when I click on it, now it's showing me all of the stuff. Now remember, these are not things I did in an isolated vacuum. These are comments that could have been made by any project participant who was actively engaged in one of these studio sessions where we work together on files. All I'm doing through Bluebeam Drawings is with a click of a series of buttons, really quickly, I'm making copies of that available in a view-only fashion to anybody, anywhere with a browser and a BBID. That's all they need. No more arguments about, oh, I can't, my company can't afford to download $600 copies of review and participate. And if all they need is access to see the most up-to-date, most current information, there are 3 different technologies here that are all available to you for free that you just need to decide if you want to leverage it or not. So that's all I'm going to say about Bluebeam Drawings in this webinar. I'm going to minimize it, and I'm going to go back to Studio and talk about Studio in a more traditional usage way. Right? So I'm going to go here in this Studio session that I've got running, and I'm going to decide to just completely shut it down. And I'll show you how to do this in just a minute. I'm going to say overwrite the one on the server under Studio Projects. I don't care about generating a report, and let's close this thing down. It's overwriting it. It's showing me here that that file has been updated, and as soon as it gives it itself a second, this little icon here will change to show that it's been processed and it's locked out. All right, and I'll hit, yeah, let's save those changes. I'll say final from session and check it in. All right, so here I'm going to log out completely and log back in, and I'll show you. So you're in Bluebeam, you're doing your normal thing, you create a PDF, or you open one that's already available to you. Like I'm going to go grab a mechanical template file and just create a brand new one here. And I start marking this thing up by myself. And maybe I put some markups in here. And then I realize, you know what? I need to let the rest of the project people work with me on this. So I save this file under a specific name somewhere. I'm just going to dump it to my desktop, and I'm going to call it new file. But it's on my local machine. If I take my mouse and put it on the tab, it shows me exactly the path to where that file is. Now I decide I need to go to the cloud. So I have to go to the Studio panel, and I have to log in. Now, normally, for me, it just does it. It does it because of the choices I've made. I've already in the past given it my BBID and my password, and I turned on keep me signed in. That way, every time I go to Bluebeam Studio, I don't have to do this. It just goes. It's much faster. So I'm going to put in my password, and I'm going to log in. It takes me to the Studio server where I can either go to projects or I can go to sessions. Now, and I'm looking at the ones I've joined or not joined, either one. You don't have to put a document into a Studio project to use it in a session. You can just go straight to sessions. So I'm going to say I want to go create a session where people can work with me on this file. So that is what this little plus sign is for. If you hover over it, it says add, and when you click on it, it says, do you want to join a session that someone else created, or do you want to create your own? Now, if you don't have a licensed copy of Bluebeam, you cannot do new session. You can only join and participate. You can't host. So here I've got a valid license. I'm going to say, let's create a new session. First question always is, what do you want to call it? And I'm going to call it week 4 session manually. Now, I've got a file open. If I want to take this to the cloud with me, I can just say, yeah, include all the open files. Or I can go to add, and I can walk through a directory, and I can include files that aren't already open, but I want a copy of them taken to the cloud as well. I can grab a bunch of that stuff. Before I even hit OK, I can decide what I'm going to let invited people do. They will be able to take these documents and save them locally under a different name. They'll be able to print them, mark them up. They'll be able to send alerts to each other about markups that they think are important. They will not be able to upload their own documents to this session. The session is like a virtual conference room. unless I turn that on and I grant them the ability to add documents. Now here I'm doing it for just about everybody, but you can control it on a group or even an individual basis after you've got the session created. This is the most important question of this interface is, do you want to restrict access to this session and the documents that are uploaded to it for markup to only invited people or open to the planet? Right now it's open to the planet. Anybody who is able to find out what my 9-digit number is would be able to go in and actively mark up documents if I leave that unchecked, which is fine. I'm going to do that. In the real world, 99% of the time, you're going to restrict it and only invite specific people. This last one here, you don't have to do this. It's a tool, and it's asking you, do you want to establish a point in time where people's opportunity to comment is over? Friday at 5 p.m. Central Time, we're shutting this thing down. If you haven't bothered to go online and express your opinion by that time, you can't. You know, that's a session expiration date and time that you can choose to enable. And if you do that, over here when it shows you the list of available sessions on the upper left-hand side, any of these ones that has a ticking time bomb like that, it will be colored differently, the icon will look different, and when you hover over it, it'll tell you how much time is left. And as you get closer, it changes colors, and you know, it's really telling you, hey, pay attention to me because your window is closing. But again, you don't have to do that at all. Eventually, you're going to hit OK, and you're going to create your cloud-based virtual conference room, your studio session. It's uploading copies of those files. Now they have to be PDFs. That's the only thing that a studio session will support is a PDF file. For those of you using Review 2019, this is brand new in 20. Some of it is similar. In 2018, 2019, 2017, you can go and create a session and use your address book, and you can invite people in through your address book. You can go to a list of groups that you've identified and members of those groups, and you could do that as well. What's new is this top option here where it says, hey, I want to paste a list of stuff. I want to paste some emails in there. Now, this is brand new. What I'm doing is I'm going over to my local machine. I've got a Windows Explorer window open, and what I'm doing is I'm looking for a file that I created. Okay, so this is an Excel spreadsheet, right? I just opened it. It's sitting right here. And the thing in blue, you know, I'm just going to cut and paste that, right? So I'm going to do a copy, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to paste it in there. That's not an email list. That's a contact list. It's got phone numbers, addresses, you know, titles, all kinds of stuff. But I just cut and pasted it in there. In the lower right-hand corner, this new feature says check and include emails. And when I do that, it cleans that up specifically for email invitations to go out to invite people to your studio session. So you don't have to go in there. I mean, in 2019 and previous versions, this was a decent amount of work to do something this sophisticated where you wanted to have the you know, this many people invited, and you know, maybe you created a distribution list in your email system and you were able to do some of those things, but nowhere was it nearly as convenient as it is now, where you can just hit these buttons and then say invite participants, or you can add a message before you finally hit the invite participants. And right now I'm not going to invite my coworkers to a session that I'm going to delete in about 5 minutes, so I'm just going to hit cancel and I'll say yes and go on. But if I had done that, I would be able to come right here and see, again, new in Review 20, a list of people, project participants to whom I've invited to come work with me on this document, or documents, because I've got 2 of them, and I can see which ones I've invited that haven't bothered to join, and I would be able to go in there and right-click on any one of them and say send them a reminder. So again, enhancements in Review 20 that are specific to sessions. Now, there are actually 2 copies of this file called New File. There's the one on my local machine. It's still there, and there's a copy in the cloud. If I go click on that one, notice this is super important about sessions and projects and so on, is always look at these tabs to see if there's any kind of visual indicator. That's a visual indicator that this file is not on a network or local drive. It's in a studio session. That's a visual clue to you that this thing is in the cloud. It's a copy of this file that's up there. This one is a copy of the file that's on my local machine. And you can tell really quickly when I click here, all of my content editing tools go gray. And when I click here, they become live again because this is on my local machine. This is not, and that's the rules. A couple of more rules about studio sessions. When I go there and I want to start working with things like custom columns, like responsibility, material type, hours, man hours, I want to come over here and I want to look at layers of information, like architectural and plumbing and, civil and whatever they are. They have to be created in the PDF file before you upload it to the studio session. Can't create these things after the fact. Right? Here's a file locally. Local file. I go to markups list and I go to columns and I go to manage columns, and there's a button right there to create custom columns or edit what's available. If I go to the cloud and I go to markup list and columns and manage columns, it's completely disabled. So you cannot create, modify, edit, do anything with other than fill in metadata to a custom column unless it was created before you uploaded your file. Right? So always keep that in mind, because it's just one of the rules of working with sessions. Now we're here in a studio session, a virtual conference room, and we could have up to 500 people simultaneously working on this. These markups could have been done by somebody else. I'm going to show you an example of that in a different session. I'm going to leave this one just by walking out of the room, and I'm going to walk into another virtual conference room. This one was started weeks ago. It's had multiple people inside of it, and these are the files that we were marking up. And if I go and click on any one of these markups, right, it'll show me in the markup list who did it, when they did it. So if I go and click on like this red call out right here, if I click on that, it tells me that was done by Mary Mead back on, I don't have the date and time displayed, but it's in the database. But notice how everything is grayed out. That's because that's not my markup. Right? It was done by somebody else. If I go click on mine, my markups have these bright yellow control points, and I can go in there because it's mine. I can change it. I can delete it. I can move it. I can right click on it, and there's a whole menu of stuff I can do to it. But stuff that was done by other people, it's all grayed out. That was done by someone else. This was done by, I forget her name. I think it was Andrea. This was done by Mary. I can't change anything they did while we're in the cloud. What I can do is I can right click on it, and I can reply back to it. I could give a response to it saying, Mary, I already fixed that. Something along those lines. All right, so now there's her markup with my reply to her markup, which doesn't modify her markup in any way. They're actually two separate markups that just have a relationship. I can also right click on hers, and I can go in and I can alert someone else. So I could come in here and I could hit choose, and it would give me a list of everyone who is in or has ever been in this session. And I'd be able to choose that person and say, Mary's markup here is important, and I think you need to pay attention to it and take a good look at it. Even if they've been offline for 2 weeks, the next time they log into this studio session, this section here called notifications is going to start turning, or it'll turn orange, and it'll start flashing on the interface saying, you need to this is one that he sent me. Someone else alerted me to a call out. This was weeks and weeks ago. But on their system, they'll have a bright orange one here saying that Terry Klein is alerting you to Mary's markup. And as soon as they click on it, it will auto-magnify her markup in the center of the screen so that there's no question as to which markup I'm trying to get them to see. Now, all of my project participants in this example are offline right now, but if they weren't, right, let's say, for example, that Mary was actively participating in this session with me, her name would be shown just like mine in bright white, and over on the right-hand side, right here, would be a little icon of a person, and when I click on it, it will say follow. And what that does is that synchronizes. Whenever I pick a person and I choose follow, I let go of my mouse. At that point, my screen is synchronized with their screen. Anything they do, zooming in and out, changing from page 1 to page 42, placing a markup, whatever they're doing, I can see exactly what they're doing it as they're doing it because mine is completely synchronized with theirs. I can even see their mouse. It will show up as a four-sided triangular mouse indicator showing me exactly where their stuff is as well. Last thing on sessions, and I've only got about 2 or 3 more minutes here. Last thing on sessions is the difference between leaving a session and ending a session. All right, now here's a session I'm about to leave. It's just a doorway. You go right there, you say leave session. It's like you walked out of a conference room. No big deal. I'm going to go to that one that we created just a few minutes ago, and I'm going to click on it. Now here, I'm going to finish a session, and this is also a change between 2019 or earlier and Review 20. In 2019, there was a button right here that said finish session, and that's how you close one down if it doesn't have an automatic timer. The settings button, which is what is here now, was hidden under the session name. The only way you could get to it was to know to click here and go down to settings. Well, they swapped those two in Review 20 to where the finish session button is hidden now, and the settings button is here and visible and available the same way it is in a studio project. Now, if I want to close a session, finish it completely, you have to click on the name, choose finish, and make some choices. What are we going to do with the file? Remember, this is a copy of a file from my local machine. Do you want to overwrite it with all these new indications? Do you want to put it in a separate folder with maybe the session identification number? There's lots of choices you can make. I don't want to do anything with it. I'm going to say forget it, like it never happened. Don't generate a report. And if you go into settings, there's 3 different flavors of data, metadata, important information like this audit trail. Do you want to keep a copy of the audit trail? Who did what when? But if you just say no, you say, yeah, forget what I did. Don't do any reports. It's like it never happened. It just completely shuts the thing down. Any of the markups that any of your project participants did is now gone away. Now we are right at the 3 o'clock point. For those of you who don't have any more time, I'm going to end it here. You're welcome to hit the YouTube channel in a few days. This will be up there. For any of those of you who are really interested in studio projects, I'm going to take another maybe 5 minutes and cover some details on studio projects. And either way, whether you can stay or not, hit the YouTube channel and you'll be able to see this next 5 minutes as well. Lastly is a reminder about next week. Next week is our 5th and final Bluebeam webinar for September, and it's going to be completely focused on Bluebeam Extreme, what makes it different than either Bluebeam Standard or Bluebeam CAD, and then you've got Extreme. What's special about it? And we're only going to focus on the things that are in Extreme that aren't in any of the other editions. That'll be Tuesday at 2 p.m. I hope you can make it. And for those of you who are leaving, have a great day. For those of you who are staying, I'll continue for a few minutes and we'll go into studio projects. Okay, studio projects. Again, studio sessions, PDF only, collaboration, up to 500 people simultaneously commenting on even just one file, if that's what you want. That's totally different than studio projects. Studio projects is a free cloud-based storage system, just like Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, whatever you've used in the past. To access it, you log into Bluebeam Studio, and instead of going to sessions, you go to projects. It's that simple. From here, you got the same thing in 20. You can see the ones that you've created or joined versus the ones that you've been invited to but haven't joined yet. And then you've got, well, you've always had this, I don't generally cover it a lot, but there's in both sessions and projects, there's a little filter right here where you can sort things by date created or ID number. Yeah, I just leave it set to sort alphabetically, so that I leave it set to name, but that's purely, personal preference. Just like with a studio session, there's a plus button here, an add button. And when you choose that, that will give you the option of either joining a studio session where you have to enter a 9-digit number, because they're all automatically assigned a 9-digit number when you create them, or you can create your own brand new studio project. Now here again, to join one and participate, you don't need a licensed copy of Bluebeam Review. You just need a trial version or one of the view-only versions, or there are 2 apps that work on the iPad, not an iPhone, not an Android, just the iPad. But there are 2 apps that would allow you to access these projects and access the documents that you put inside of them. Now the apps are going to be limited to, in essence, PDF. I can put an Excel spreadsheet up there, and if I have the Microsoft Excel app on my iPad, I think that does work. I'd have to test it to say 100% definitively it does, but it might, because that's how it works with the PC. If I take an Excel spreadsheet and push it up to a project and then say I want to open it, it opens it in Excel, and I'll show that to you here in just a second. So we're going to say, let's create a new project. You got to give your project a name. I'm going to say week 4 project sample. Now, unlike a studio session, it doesn't give you up front all of these permissions and who can do what and what are the access controls. It just does it. It just creates it. And it creates it under the assumption that you only want to have invited people coming into your project. But if that's not what you want, after you create it, you can go into it. You can see how it's highlighted in white right now. It's an active project. Right here is the settings option. And after you've created it, you would want to go there and go to these 3 tabs of choices as a host. So it created it with restrictions, only invited people. You could take that off, let the whole world come in, or you could leave that on and grant permissions as you see fit, or access, just letting people in. Now you can go to permissions and you can identify everybody, or you can identify specific groups, or you can identify specific email addresses of people that you want to do certain permissions that other people don't have. So you can have permissions done on a global, group, or individual level. And in addition to permissions saying what you can and cannot do, you can have folder permissions that control what you can and cannot do to files into the various folders to which you're granted access. And new in Review 20 is you can set that stuff up before your invited guests have even accepted the invitation. You couldn't do that in 19 or any previous version. They had to accept it first, and then you would have to go and set the privileges. Now you can be proactive about it. Also, new in Review 20 as it relates to inviting people to your project is, because it doesn't do it up front, it does it after the fact. You can come to your project name and go to this little button right here that says invite. And when you click on that, it's got the same new enhanced list editing engine that the session stuff does as well. So when they updated Studio, it wasn't just sessions, it's projects as well. Now that you've got a storage location that can handle unlimited number of files, unlimited number of file types, and unlimited file sizes, you just need to decide how you want to structure it. Do you want to start creating your own folder structure? And I'm going to call this one root. And I'm going to go to root and I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say I want to create a new folder. Or while I've got it highlighted, I could just come here and say, yeah, I want to create a new folder, and I'll call this subfolder 1. Let's subfolder level 1. And it does that. Now I can expand it. I can go to subfolder level 1. I can say, let's create a new one, and let's call it subfolder level 2. And it just keeps building your tree. When you're ready, you can start going to the folders where you want and uploading files. And you can say, okay, I want to go upload some files. And okay, let's take that one and that one. And see, it's not limiting it to PDF files. Right? It's the filter right now is set to *.*. So you could go into, like under here, Dropbox. I've got one that says a mixture of files. I could grab all of those files right now of various types, and I could come in here and say, open those up. Yep, put them up there, and see it's in the process of uploading copies of each of those files to the cloud in their native format. Now I could allow specific people to come in and grab this Excel spreadsheet, right click on it and say open it or check it out. Check it out means reserve it for my exclusive use. I'm going to get to it in a minute, but don't launch Microsoft Excel. Open says check it out, reserve it for my exclusive use, and launch its native application. If it was an RVT file, it would launch Revit. If it was a DGN file, it would launch MicroStation or Open Roads. Whatever your registry has your 3-digit extension associated with, that's what it's going to launch. The only gotcha on this is if it, and you can't really blame them, but if it is a PDF file, it is going to open with Bluebeam review. Even if your default PDF application in your registry is set to open with Adobe Acrobat, if it's hosted in the Studio project and it's a PDF and you say open it, it's going to ignore. The programmers at Bluebeam have written it so that it will ignore Adobe and it will still open it in the Bluebeam editor. If you don't want that, you have to put a little more effort into it. You have to download a copy of it manually and then edit it with Adobe and put it back. But if it's anything else, it opens up in the native application based on your registry. But that is a manual process. It's a whole lot faster if you have it structured the way you want, to simply go to whatever folder you want, right click and say, I want to upload a folder. If you tell it I want to upload a folder, and I'm not going to do this because it would take a while. If I went to all of my client documents right now and I said, yep, that's the one I want, it would take every folder, every subfolder, every sub-subfolder, every file within those folder tree, and it would process down through this tree until it uploaded all of that stuff to the cloud. It just churns and churns. So make sure before you go and use the upload folder option that you know the level of detail, the level of structure, and the level of file types that it's going to be processing, because it starts it immediately and it will just keep churning until it's done uploading all of that stuff. So once you have a project up there, you can go into it like this one here I've got called, where is it, various file formats. There's a couple of things in here. I've got about a minute left that are important. To open any one of these things, as I said, you can right click on it and check it out or open it, either one. You can also, and this is really a super beneficial, powerful tool of projects that I use all the time, is this thing called a share link. If I want to share this Word document with someone, I can right click on it, tell it to create me a share link. I've got two choices. It's going to create a web URL, an address, in order for them to click on and come and get this file. That can be good forever as long as this project exists, or it can be timed out in 24 hours. And if I do that, I need to include in my message to them, hey, here's a link to download this Word document. It's going to be inactive in 24 hours. You don't have to require a password on your to enable this download, but you can. And if it's a PDF file, there's the option to flatten markups before you allow the download of it. So there's lots of choices you can make in here. Most of mine are set to lifetime of the project, no password, no flatten. And then it just gives me this. It says, here's a web URL. I'm going to copy that. Just copy it, and that is what I would put into my email. But instead of that, I'm going to go to my browser. I think I've got one. Yeah, there's one drawing here. And this is what your invited person would see when they hit that. It just launches this that says, hey, Terry has invited you to have access to this file. It could be a zip file with 5,000 files. I mean, it could be a PDF package that you created. It could be a Bluebeam profile or tool set, or it could be anything. You're just making it easy for them to download. They do not need anything Bluebeam related. All they need is a browser and the ability to follow a link and hit download, and they're going to get a copy of that file. What they can and cannot do with that file is going to depend on what they have after the fact. But to receive one of these share links, they don't need anything at all other than you creating it and sending it to them through some mechanism. Well, that's it. I'm going to end this conversation about the studio projects. Thanks to all of you who stuck around. I will be going through the questions and adding those to the recording. So by all means, please look at the end of the recording once it's uploaded to YouTube to see the responses to the questions. And as you're leaving, again, those surveys are really important to us. If you would there's only 5 or 6 questions. Just please express your opinion so we can try to make these webinars as helpful as possible. And if you are interested in discussing your use of Bluebeam and how we might be able to help with training or consulting services, please fill out that in that survey as well, and we'll get in touch with you right away. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for attending. There's an important feature of Studio Sessions that I didn't have time to cover live during the webinar, so I thought I'd add it here as bonus content. And that is the ability to work with a studio session offline. Currently, I'm in a live studio session. I'm on the internet. I'm connected to the studio server, and there could be hundreds of other project participants in here simultaneously. I know all of that is happening from one icon. If I go to this upper left-hand corner here and I look at that icon, it shows a green light and 2 halves of an electrical connection showing me that I am connected. If I know I'm taking this computer out to the field where I've got 0 internet capability, but I want to be able to mark up these various documents. I've got 2 documents in this session. I want to take them with me even though I'm completely offline. There's a feature for that. You simply go to that icon and click on it. It'll open this dialog box that says, would you like to work offline? You simply say yes. Now you have your documents on your device. You are now disconnected from the studio server. Now, technically, I'm still on the internet, but that's going to change in the next few minutes or the next few hours. So I've got all of this stuff with me. If I now go out to the field and I continue to mark this document up, whatever it is I wind up doing with it, what I'm doing is marking it up, and all of those markups are going into this category called pending in the audit trail. And anything anybody else is doing in the cloud while I'm away is being recorded in the cloud as well, so that even though I can't see it in the future, an hour from now, a day from now, the next time I do have internet connectivity, I can come back with my device, tell it I want to connect to the studio server, and when I do that, it will take everything I did while I was offline and upload it to the cloud, and it will also let me see everything that happened by anyone else while I was away. Great feature. It's the ability to work offline in a studio session, even though you don't have internet connectivity. That's it. I hope you find this video helpful, and you'll review the other videos available as well.